Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival, and today we are going to talk about.
Hey everybody,
Oops,
I'm JJ Johnson.
I do
You're
that every
watching
time.
Reality Survival, and today we are going to talk about. Oops, I'm JJ Johnson.
Okay, I think we got that fixed now. All right, so we're going to talk about situational awareness, and this might be a little longer than some of the other um, live streams and stuff. I don't know exactly how long it's going to go, but we're going to cover a lot of things. We're going to cover the 5 elements of self-defense. We're going to cover establishing a baseline and taking a peek. That's an acronym that I use. So I'm going to talk about 3 stages of vigilance, and which is kind of a shortened, more simplified version of Cooper's color code. We're going to talk a little bit about how to identify potential threats and how that kind of works in with the OODA loop or Boyd's cycle. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, in a grid down kind of situation, without rule of law kind of situation, how does this apply? And we're also going to talk a little bit about, just briefly, on what happens after you employ some sort of, self-defense or whatever. Okay, so I guess we got a lot of stuff to go over here. Hey, what's going on, guys? Thank you for joining in here. We got 3 Blades, Clint Torres, Leslie Burgett, DB Cooper, Robert Jeffrey, Bumblebee Junction, and Gary. Alrighty, very cool, guys. Like I said, if you got questions as I'm going through this, I'll stop periodically kind of between each section, and I'll try to answer any questions. If you have questions, try to put them in all caps so that I can pick them out of the chat, because sometimes the chat gets kind of busy and I can't quite follow everything. Hey, what's going on, Tim? Okay, so situational awareness. So the first thing to talk about with situational awareness in today's setting, while the grid is up and all that kind of stuff, is you really need to know the 5 elements of self-defense. And I did a video that probably talks about this subject more than what I'll talk about it here, but I'll just go through the 5 for you guys real fast. The first thing is you essentially have 5 elements to a self-defense type situation where you're employing either lethal force or non-lethal force. It doesn't really make a difference. The first one is innocence. So that means that in order to be able to claim self-defense, you cannot have been the aggressor. So you can't take preeminent violence. You've got to be the victim, which, it's kind of a bummer sometimes. I mean, you'd like to be able to strike first or whatever the case may be, but in the eyes of the law, you have to be innocent, not the aggressor. The second thing is imminence. That means that the threat is happening to you right now. All right. The guy can't be running away. He can't have just did something to you and then he stopped. It's got to be actually in the moment right then. The threat is happening to you right then. Okay. Or someone you love close by or whatever the case may be. And it could be a stranger as well. But the next thing is number 3 is proportionality. So you have to use only as much force as is needed for the situation. And you have to make a determination, is that lethal or is that non-lethal? If a person is just, say they're hitting you with their bare fists and you're roughly the same size and all those kinds of factors, then lethal force is probably not going to be authorized in the eyes of the law. All right. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just giving you what my understanding of what self-defense law is in most places. So proportionality is important. Your response needs to be in kind for what their threat was. The next thing is avoidance. And you need to know, and this is where a little bit of research on your part comes in, is do you have a duty to retreat? There are some states, several states, and I talk about it a little bit more, I think, in the other video, and I'll link those down in the description. But do you have a legal duty to retreat? Most states have stand your ground laws, some states have stand your ground laws. Most states have castle doctrine laws, but some states, some of the more liberal states especially, do have a duty to retreat clause, which means that if you have the opportunity to do so, you have to try to get away before you use lethal force. So that's important. And then number 5 is reasonableness. Now, this is reasonableness to the eyes of an average citizen. Think the jury. Were the actions that you took reasonable given the situation that you were in, the place that you were at, the kind of threat that was being used, the means that you had disposable to you, all that kind of stuff. So it has to appear reasonable. Okay. So like I said, this stuff is all just important to know, for really everybody should know this stuff, but especially if you're carrying a concealed weapon, if you are a protector, if you're somebody who looks at yourself as a sheepdog, you really need to know these things. And so that's kind of the first stage there. And the next thing that you're going to want to do, or that we're going to talk about here, is establishing the baseline. And the thing is that's important with this is you have to understand that baselines change, no matter where you are. And let me get you what a baseline is. So I guess I don't have a technical definition or anything like that in front of me, but essentially what you're doing when you're trying to establish the baseline is you're looking at the environment around you and you're trying to identify if there's anything that looks abnormal or deviant, or that looks maybe sketchy in some way, that's something that doesn't look right for that place. So what is normal in one area for a particular baseline might be completely different for the baseline in, say, a restaurant in your neighborhood or something along those lines. Okay, so the baselines change, and they're ever changing in all the different places that you go. And that's why it's a continual process for you, especially, this is especially heightened during transitions. When you move into a new space, you should be looking to establish that new baseline. Okay. And one of the acronyms that I use, and I did a video on this, I'll link it below as well, is I use an acronym that I came up with called Taking a Peek, PEECK. All right. So whenever I enter a new space, a new restaurant, a new store, a new, whatever the case may be, it could be somebody's house. You can really apply it to a lot of different things. I mean, you're going to have to modify it somewhat depending on where it is, and it's primarily developed for in an urban environment when you're going into a building or a facility or something like that. So the P stands for patrons. So take a look at the people that are inside the building and just do an evaluation on them real quick, just a quick scan. Does everybody look normal? Does everybody look like they're going about their business like they should be? Is there anybody in, or, doing whatever it is they're doing? Maybe they're eating if it's in a restaurant. Does everybody look normal? Is there anybody who is maybe in a fight or crying or, anything unusual like that? So you're scanning the patrons first. Then you want to go, the next thing is an E, and that is for employees. Take a look at the employees. Are they reacting to customers normally? Are they, waiting tables, doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? Does everything look normal with the employees? Because, and the reason you look at the people first is because a lot of people talk about this and they talk about immediately looking for exits and cover and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily the right order to do things. And I mean, maybe it's splitting hairs a little bit, but people are sensors, right? So they're continually taking in information. And if you're walking into an environment with 100 different people in there and they all look like they're fine and they're normal, well, that tells you pretty quickly that there's nothing really crazy going on, not anything real big anyway. And so you want to use those people to your advantage and evaluate them first. Okay, so the next thing after patrons and employees, the next E is exits. Okay, look for the exits, look for the exit signs, and sometimes if I'm not familiar with a place, what I'll do is once I get the family sat down and everything like that, then I'll be like, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be back. And I'll take the long way around the place so that I can see where the other exits are, get a better look at people, and see if there's an exit that I wasn't aware of, from just the front room or whatever. Okay, so the next thing is cover. And with cover, you are essentially looking for a place that you could get behind if you needed to. If somebody came in, walked in the door, and just started spraying bullets or whatever, where can you get your family to get down, get behind cover? All right. The next thing here, and then this was the last one on the list, is K. And I'm taking a second look for, and this is more in my immediate vicinity. Well, once I'm sitting at the table and all that kind of stuff, I'm looking for the killers. Okay. Who are the potential shooters? Who are people who look like they could be a problem? Who, I'm profiling at this point. And that's okay. A lot of people say, oh, profiling's bad. No, profiling is okay because you're not prosecuting anybody. You're just forming a mental image in your head. Maybe I need to keep my eye on that guy. That couple looks a little bit upset over there, something along those lines. Now, in the same token, you can also be looking for helpers. Okay. And those are the people that are probably like-minded to you, and John Lovell had a video that talked about this recently. If you guys aren't subscribed to the Warrior Poet Society, you really should be. He's got a great channel and lots of great information. But he talked about where, when you see another shooter, you kind of give them a little nod and kind of acknowledge their, existence and all that kind of stuff. And it's almost kind of like a little unspoken, I got your back kind of thing. And that's what you're looking for in the helpers part of it. Who could you potentially reach out to if you needed to. All right. So with that, let me go ahead and look through. If you guys have any questions up to this point, just let me know. There's a lot of videos on this kind of stuff. Hey, what's going on, Kenzie? And somebody that I'll be talking about some of the stuff that they talked about here. Another good channel, and I think he's really an underappreciated channel, is Hibernian Sun. Irish, I think, is what he goes by, and you should definitely go check out Hibernian Sun's channel and subscribe to him as well, because he's got a lot of good information. He's been on a roll here recently, talking a lot about situational awareness kind of stuff, and that's kind of watching some of his videos were kind of what made me think about going back and doing a recap of some of the older videos that I did in pieces. So that's kind of what this is about anyway. Okay, so the next stage here is 3 stages of vigilance. Now this is really a simplification of Cooper's color code system, and he has multiple. He came up with a system that basically ranges from white to black. I think it's like white, yellow, green, orange, black, red. I don't know. I don't remember exactly which ones they were. But and the reason I tried to simplify is because I had been taught the color code thing in multiple classes. I have read it in his books and had seen it in multiple videos and all that kind of stuff. And I still couldn't remember everything because I just have a simple mind, right? So I thought maybe this is Vicarious ADVZ. Yes, Irish is back. He's been putting out several videos here lately. So to me, the 3 stages of vigilance are very simple. All right. They are green, yellow, and red. All right. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this and breaking it down so that I could keep it in the kind of in my mind and constantly thinking about where I need to be and when I need to be in what stage. And so the first one, green, is when you're in an area with a safe and established baseline, you remain observant to changes in the baseline, but you go about your normal business. Okay. So, once you've, say, gotten home from the store and relaxing, you know what your baseline is because you live there, right? So you don't need to be super observant in this particular situation. But as soon as there's a change to the baseline, you move into yellow. Okay. And same thing when you're sitting in a restaurant. Let's say you're sitting in a restaurant, you have come in, you have evaluated the area, you've established the baseline, you're comfortable with the circumstances as they currently are. Once that is established, then you can relax into green, talk with your family, and do all those kinds of things, but you still remain observant. You're looking for changes to that baseline. Does somebody come in and start yelling? Does, this couple over here start, the guy stand up and start, throwing his arms around? You're looking for those changes. When those changes happen, then you're moving into yellow. And with yellow, you're essentially, something has pulled you out of green. So you're looking, you're scanning, and you're starting to evaluate the possible threats. Okay. What is the situation? Why is the guy at the front counter mad? Does it seem like a legitimate gripe? Is he crazy? Does he look, like he's on drugs? What's going on? What's the fight with this couple over here all about? You're starting to evaluate a little bit closer of what's going on. You're looking, for continued deviations in that baseline in a more serious way. The other thing with yellow is that you always want to transition into the yellow stage when you are transitioning spaces. So if you're getting up to leave the restaurant, you switch into yellow. Okay. The times that you're most vulnerable to attacks, muggings, all those kinds of things are when you're in transitions, when you're getting into your car, when you're getting out of your car, when you're walking, from place to place, transiting through multiple areas, when you're at a stop sign in a car and you're moving, think of any kind of time when you're in a transitional space, and that is when you should be significantly more alert and scanning for potential threats and looking for threats. Okay. The next thing here is the last one in the phase is red. And with the red phase, basically, you were taking an action to avoid, engage, or neutralize a threat. Okay. So you've seen something. You've gone through your OODA loop process and you've decided what you're going to do. You're either going to avoid, engage, or neutralize. All right. And that is, that's the red phase. So you're doing something to get away from it. Okay. And that might be pulling out your concealed weapon and engaging the target. I mean, maybe it's a lethal force situation. Maybe you're just going to, acknowledge the guy's presence, give him a quick heads up. Hey, what's up, guys? That might be all it is. Maybe you're going to close the gap and engage the target in hand-to-hand combat, hand-to-hand, self-defense, whatever the case may be. It really just depends on the situation. Okay. But anytime that you're in red, it's when you are physically taking some kind of an action to avoid, engage, or neutralize. All right. Okay. Let me go through the comments here real quick. So to me, it's easier to remember that way. It just is. It's just a lot easier. So, and I think that when you break down Cooper's system, it may be more technically accurate, right? His is a little bit more in depth, and but for me, trying to increase my own vigilance and all that kind of stuff, it was just easier to remember. It was just easier to remember red, green, and yellow, or yellow, green, and red, whichever order you want to put them in. Green, yellow, red. So that's what I went with. Okay, let's see here. So how do we identify potential threats? So once we've been scanning and all that kind of stuff, then let's say we come across somebody who we think deserves some attention, who deserves a little bit more than just what you've gone through with establishing your baseline. You've identified that they're a threat. Now this is where Boyd's cycle or the OODA loop kind of works in with evaluating threats, in my opinion. And so the first part of the OODA loop, it's OODA, and the first O is observe. Okay, so you're being observant. Again, that's definitely any time that you're in yellow, but also you're being observant to changes to your baseline in green. Okay, but you're more relaxed in green. Okay, so with observation, if you see a threat, the thing that you want to focus on first is their hands. Always look at their hands. And like I said, Irish was talking about this recently in a video, and I'll link to his channel if you guys aren't familiar with it down in the description below. He is he's got a lot of good information. He really does. He's had a lot of training. He's had a lot of time in the military, and you should really check out his channel. But he's exactly right when he was talking about look at the hands first. So one slight deviation, the next thing that I look at with somebody is their eyes. So I'll look at hands first and then eyes. And your eyes, it's like people say, they're kind of the gateway to your soul. And I have found, over 20 plus years of being a law enforcement officer, that you can usually tell somebody's intent by looking in their eyes, and that is, it's just kind of a universal truth. I don't know what that is, but anyway, so I go with hands, eyes, then clothing bulges, looking to see if I can see that they have a weapon somewhere or an obvious weapon, obviously. Then you just look at their overall demeanor. How are they standing? What are their feet positioned like? Are they in an attack stance, with their feet staggered and slightly bladed? Or, what's the situation? Are they standing just flat-footed and, those kind of things? That really makes a difference, because people who are getting ready to do something usually shift their feet to indicate where they're going to go and all that kind of stuff. So, their stance and their general demeanor is a good thing to look at. And the last thing is who are their friends? Who are they with? Okay. So hands, eyes, clothing bulges, demeanor, and friends. That's kind of how I go with trying to evaluate potential threats, people who could be a problem or whatever. So that's observe in the OODA loop thing here. Okay. Orient is the next O in OODA loop. So with this, after you've made your observations, you're going to have to figure out, you're going to start orienting yourself on how you're going to deal with this. And this is these two, orient and decide, can kind of run together, and they can happen quite quickly. But for most situations, you're going to either continue your path, continue with what you're doing right there. Maybe you're just sitting in a restaurant. Maybe you're walking somewhere, whatever the case may be. The next thing is make space. Maybe you get a bad vibe about this guy and you just think, well, I need to make some space right here first, before we do really anything else. The next thing is you could just decide to move towards cover. If you believe that something's going to go down, you can be moving towards cover, or you can close the gap, to basically go hands-on. And then decide is the next one. So observe, orient, decide. Now with this one, I think that and I did a video talking about this, especially in an SHTF situation, you've really only got 4 options, and that's going to be kill, capture, contact, or avoid. And that's probably pretty true in a grid up situation, but you're probably going to look at flipping that line around. Avoidance being the first thing, making contact as the second, going hands-on to try to get them under control in some way, or capture, and then the last one would be to kill. So once your decision is done, that, and let me go through these. So killing, obviously just engaging with a weapon, right? That's going to be the most likely thing, unless you're just that badass that you're going to do it barehanded. And then with contact, You might just, like I said, we acknowledge their presence. Maybe you verbally confront them. You know, it just depends. With avoidance, like I said, you're just moving on. You move to the next person in your evaluation, whatever the case may be, and then yeah. So that's just kind of that there. Now the last thing after decide is A in the UDA. So we got observe, orient, decide, and then act. Now, when you decide to act, it needs to be you need to commit to your course of action with immediacy and finality. All right, especially if you're going to, engage them with a weapon or engage them with your fists or whatever the case may be. Even if you're going to engage them verbally, you need to do it from a position of authority. You need to do it like, I'm the boss. You need to listen. This is what's going to happen. Whatever the case may be. All right, you need to go through with that action. So, okay. So that's pretty much OODA loop, and also it's talking about the OODA loop in the process of identifying threats. Okay. All right. Let me just take a look at the chat here, see if I missed anything really big. So Kanzi asks, is there a black, and if so, what is it? So in my system, there's not. In Cooper's color code system, there is a black, and that is basically when you're engaging or being engaged by a threat or target or whatever, if I remember correctly. For me, that's the same as red, because anytime that I'm doing something to engage or avoid or whatever the case may be, I'm taking some action to change the situation, then that's when I consider myself in red, and I can give you one story. I don't remember where my wife and I were. We went to a nightclub somewhere. I think it was in South Beach, Miami, maybe something like that. I can't remember for sure where we were, but I'm pretty sure it was Seattle. It was Seattle. And so we went into this nightclub, and it was kind of there was kind of just a weird vibe in the whole nightclub. And as I started looking around and scanning things, I noticed that there were several guys, all of a particular ethnic persuasion, back along one wall. And then there were a bunch of other guys of particular persuasion in the other wall over here. And there was a lot of tension between them. And so, I told the wife, I said, hey, this is not going to be good. Something's getting ready to happen here. I don't like this. So we need to get on out of here. So to me, that was being in red, right? We were taking an action to avoid a situation. And those people weren't looking at us. They were looking at each other. And it ended up being a bad situation, because probably 5 minutes or so after we were out of the club, we heard bunch of police sirens and everything like that coming to the area, and something happened. I don't know specifically what it was that happened, but I assume that these two different rival gangs ended up going at it, and so it doesn't necessarily have to be a situation where you are, pulling your gun out or whatever the case may be. Situational awareness can stop that from happening if you're being observant and looking around and everything. Okay. Where am I at here in my process? Okay, so your goal, when you decide to do something with someone, whether that is engage with them, talk with them, acknowledge their presence, whatever the case may be, what you're trying to do there is you're trying to interrupt their OODA loop to get them off of the track that they were on. So if you think that somebody's standing in like a pre-attack kind of stance, you think they're getting ready to do something or whatever, your goal there is to interrupt their thought processes, their decision-making process, because everybody, bad guys included, also use the OODA loop process. And if you can get in there and interrupt that thing, that may be enough to just get them to stop, and not attack or do whatever bad thing they were going to do at that moment, if that makes sense. Okay. So, and again, that might be why, if you're walking down the street and you see a couple of guys over here kind of in a dark area, and they're standing there, and you just look over and be like, "Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?" Just letting them know that you see them, and you're addressing them in a confident way, that you're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be a victim." Then that's a good thing, because that might just give them a second thought. They may say, "Ooh, I don't know if that's the right target. Maybe we need to wait, look for somebody who's not so observant. We can catch them off guard." Criminals love to catch their prey off guard, and so that is a key thing that you want to do, is you want to try to interrupt their OODA loop. Something else you can do, and I'll do, like, when we were in New York, when we were walking around checking places, stuff out, we took my daughter to New York to basically show her what a big city's like. How do you get a cab? How do you use the subway? How do you do this? What do you look for? If this is a shady part of town, what are some of the indicators there, and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I do is I walk with my flashlight in my hand, and it's my offhand, obviously not my draw hand, and but if I see something or somebody or somewhere, I'll just hit them with the light, not right in their face, just down by their feet or whatever, and just to let them know that we see them, and that can be a good deterrent, as well. Okay, so where am I at here? Interrupting their OODA loop. That's the important thing that I was trying to get to in that. Again, and the cycle of an OODA loop is something that happens continuously as you're observing and evaluating new potential threats and all that kind of stuff. It's something that people do unconsciously. So why is it important to know? The reason it's important to know is because if you are aware of it, then you can make those decisions more concretely and with more finality, and you can be more intentional about them, and so I think that's important, being intentional about this stuff. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so now we want to talk about a little bit more about grid down without rule of law kind of situation. Okay. Maybe it's not grid down. Maybe it's just without rule of law. Maybe there's just no functioning government for whatever reason. Could be pandemic, could be terrorist attack, could be, I don't care, whatever. Could be, any number of things. And I'm going to do another video talking about this, talking about the hermit style of survival philosophy. And this is something that Hibernian Sun had also talked about here recently as well. And it's the fact that the reality of a without rule of law situation is that you have to be, in the go. You might be right. Black could be incapacitated. Like I said, I don't remember because I have a hard time remembering everything. So I could be wrong on what I said earlier. Sorry. I was just looking at a comment here in the chat. So in a without rule of law situation, you have to understand that you cannot just lock yourself in your house and for the first month or 90 days and hope that everything is going to be okay. All right. It will be required, regardless of how much food or water you have stored up in your house, that you get out and you engage the space. Okay. You'll want to, no matter what. You're going to want to know what other people are doing. You're going to want to know what other people have learned. You're going to want to talk with people. You're going to want to find out if a market has been opened so that you can get that little X, Y, Z that you need, that you forgot about. You're going to want to for security reasons, because you're going to want to know what's happening outside of my immediate zone that I can see. Okay. And so you can utilize all these things that we've been talking about with Bumblebee Junction. He did a super chat again. Thank you very much, sir. You really don't have to do that. I feel bad when you do it sometimes, but I do really appreciate it. He says, thank you for being the voice of reason in these trying and confusing times. Mark has an awesome channel called Bumblebee Junction, and it is primarily a homesteading channel. He's got tons and tons of videos that talk about homesteading and gardening and, chickens and all that kind of stuff. So you guys should definitely go check him out. Okay. So what I was saying is that, in a without rule of law situation, you can't just be a hermit. Okay. It doesn't matter where you're living. It doesn't matter if you're in a rural area. It doesn't matter if you're in a semi-rural area in a small town, or if you're in suburbs, or whatever the case may be. You're going to eventually have to get out and engage the space. So you can use all these things that we're talking about here when you're doing that. Okay. And so it all really applies the same. The one difference that could potentially, happen in a without rule of law situation is you may want to take preemptive action / violence to control the situation early. And that's different than what we have in a rule of law situation where I talked about the 5 elements of self-defense earlier in the video. And that is really going to have to be something that you establish in your own mind as far as what is right for the situation. Okay. But it's not going to be, I just kill everybody I come in contact with. It's not going to work. All right. It's not going to work because A, you're not that good a shooter. You're really not. And B, you'll get killed. Okay. That's just the way it's going to happen. You're just going to die. If you have that mindset or think that you're going to do that in a without rule of law situation, you're going to die. Charlene, I see your question about any hints for cooking outside your house and staying safe. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So my main point here is that you're going to eventually have to get out of the house. You're going to run out of water sometime because most people, probably are not storing more than like 3 months worth of water in their house at one time. It takes up a lot of space. It's very heavy. It's, so you're going to have to gather water. You're going to just want to get out just for your sanity, because when you've been locked in a place for, several days, weeks, whatever the case may be, you're going to just want some fresh air, because it's going to smell funky in there. Again, for security purposes, you're going to want to be out. You're going to want to be doing patrols around your area. You should be working with your neighbors. I know a lot of people say my neighbors suck, I'm not going to work with them and all that kind of stuff. That's a problem. That's a real problem for you. And maybe you need to look at leaving. Maybe you need to look at moving and finding better neighbors. Or maybe you need to figure out how to become their friend, because it will be important if you live in a suburban or a development of any kind where you have neighbors and close around you, that you work with your neighbors. Okay. It will be. There's no question about this whatsoever. You're going to have to figure out how to work with them. And it's a whole lot better to do that now rather than after something happens. And that doesn't mean that you have to go start talking to them about your preps and about what'll happen, is if, there's a situation and all that kind of stuff. In some places, like here where I live, you could do that pretty easily because pretty much everybody is on the same page. But in a lot of places, people think you're that crazy, doomsday prepper guy. And then you've got offset considerations and all that kind of stuff about how you go about doing that. But if you're friends with them, if you can talk with them and relate to them on a regular level, then it's going to make the process so much easier once something happens. Okay. You really need to work hard with establishing connections in your local community. And maybe it's not, maybe that one neighbor you have next door is just a dick and you can't deal with them, but you might be able to work with the other 5, around you. And when there's a situation where everybody comes together and talks about what's going on, when it's you 5 or you 6 and that one guy, it's going to be a lot easier to dictate the terms of what goes on. Okay. So there is strategic importance in dealing with your neighbors, knowing your neighbors, and having a relationship with them. I cannot emphasize that enough. Okay. Let me look here at my notes. So yeah, for everyday life, when the rule of law is established, being preemptive, you can be preemptive in pretty much everything except for violence. That's what's going to get you in trouble. Again, see that video on 5 elements of self-defense. That'll help you out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what happens after. Let's say, so I'm going to stop here. I got a quick question from Bumblebee Junction. He said, what do you think of the idea of using the crime section of the newspaper to make notes in case you run back into these locals after SHTF? I think you could definitely do that. The problem would be, how intensive is it? How much time and effort does it take? And are you going to be able to do that? Like in a small town in Tennessee somewhere, backwater Tennessee, if you've only got 1,000 people in the town, you could probably put together a pretty complete dossier of the local lowlives in a fairly short amount of time. You could probably do that. You could probably even do that with a couple of conversations with local police and, that kind of stuff, or talking to guys out at the gun range and, different things like that. So that's probably achievable. For somebody who lives in a bigger, more suburban area, probably not. It's probably going to be, a problem. But it could happen. I mean, you could just start a binder, with things that you see from the locals and all that kind of stuff. And that could kind of inform how you deal with them later based on what they're known, to be involved with. So it's a possibility. I hadn't really thought of it before. Okay. Okay. So the after effects, this is what I wanted to talk about next. The after effects. What do you do next? Let's say you engage somebody with lethal force. Okay. We'll talk about in the rule of law first. And I'll make it pretty short and sweet here. That is, I did a video on this called 15 things I would do after a self-defense shooting. I'll try to link to it below. The idea that you're just going to say nothing to the police is going to land you in jail just like that. And it's a bad call. All right. There's Massad Ayoob and U.S. Concealed Carry Association, myself, other, people in this field all pretty much agree that to a certain degree, you need to let them know, I'm the victim. I'm willing to file a complaint, and I'm more than happy to be helpful with you. I just, I need to talk to my attorney first. That's the general gist of the response, but it goes more into that, and there is more things you need to consider. So I would try to watch that video if you can. U.S. Concealed Carry Association is a great organization, and they definitely have a lot of good information that they pass out to, concealed carry holders and stuff. So if you're not a member, it's definitely worth doing. So for a rule of law situation like that, you think about what's next. You report to police. How are you going to deal with police when they get there? These are things you need to be thinking about. For a without rule of law situation, kind of still got some of the same issues. If you're saying you're going from your house to the local market that's been established or whatever, because you need to get some, who knows, tampons, I don't know, whatever. What do you do? Somebody confronts you and you end up shooting them. How are you going to deal with that? You just going to look around, see if anybody saw you and keep walking? Maybe that's the answer. Maybe the right answer, and this is, again, one of the things that Hibernian Sun talked about in his recent video, was maybe you need to document the scene. Maybe you need to document what happened. Take some notes, take a few pictures if your phone's still working, draw out a diagram, something along those lines. And that way, if society ever does come back, you can go to the sheriff and say, look, this is what happened. I did the best I could at the time. You guys weren't responding to the scene. I buried the body right over here. You know, I want to own up to the situation and let you know that I was a victim, and here's here's all the information I have on it. Maybe you just bury it and come, and don't worry about it. But you need to think about it, though. That's the point, because getting out in these situations is going to happen. You cannot just live like a hermit in your home. You will have to get out. You will have to engage people at some point. Okay. And it's not going to be as long of a timeline as you think. It's not going to be several months into the situation. Probably it's probably going to be a few weeks for most people. So we need to start getting in the mindset of, how do I operate in this environment? All right. And for those people who have been deployed, it may look a lot like Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever the case may be, these war-torn countries that are in civil war, and how people operate. The thing is that life goes on. It does. Life continues to happen even when the government sucks. There's no existing government. There's roving gangs like in Somalia and Mogadishu right now. Currently, there's no government in Mogadishu. You know what? People go to the market. People do things. There's multiple warring factions that operate within the same areas, and life continues. Commerce goes on. You still have to get the things that you need to survive, and you can't just all have it in your house indefinitely. It's just not an option. So thinking about how to operate in that space, what that looks like, is important. Are you going to go for the gray man kind of thing? Are you going to try to be as low profile as possible? Or are you going to be totally kitted up and in a 4-man squad and, with level 4 plates and all that kind of stuff with your AR-15 and go buzzing into town that way? It just depends. It really just depends on the situation. It depends on what the situation looks like. Both could be the right answer depending on the circumstances. Are you going to go during the daytime? Are you going to go at night? All these things are things to think about when it comes to urban survival, situational awareness, and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much all I've got on situational awareness, and it kind of covering a little bit, of both on both rule of law and without rule of law, and how you're going to deal with stuff. We talked a little bit about the 5 elements of self-defense. Remember: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. That's in a rule of law self-defense shooting. Those are the 5 things you need to know. We talked about taking a peek, which is when you enter a new space, look at the patrons, employees, exits, cover, and killers/helpers. And that's to help you establish your baseline. And we talk about 3 stages of vigilance. For me, that's green, yellow, and red. In green, you're in an area that is a safe and established baseline. You're remaining observant to changes in the baseline. In yellow, you're looking, scanning, and evaluating possible threats, looking for deviations to the best baseline. And this is the stage that you're always in during transitions. Red is taking any action to avoid, engage, or neutralize a threat. Okay. Then we talked about the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. And we talked about evaluating people. When you see a threat, you're going to look at their hands, their eyes, clothing bulges, demeanor, and friends. Those are ones I try to pick up on anyway. And then what do you do afterwards? Are you going to report it or whatever? So, all right, let me see if I can go back and catch these questions real fast here. I know that we had one about cooking and stuff. Let me see if I can get back to it. Man, you guys freaking typing like nobody's business in here. Okay, so Charlene Cole says, any hints for cooking outside your house and staying safe? Okay, this is another video. This relates to another video that I've been wanting to do here recently too. lots of the prepper experts, and I don't think there's any such thing as prepper expert personally, and I don't consider myself one either. Um, a lot of people talk about um, you can't cook your food. You can't you can't put in use your barbecue grill because people are going to smell it and they're going to come attack you. Okay, that's absurd. That's just absurd. Okay, now do you want to throw the grill on and put the barbecue sauce on and everything first so that it smells up the whole neighborhood? No, probably not. You don't want to try to draw additional attention to yourself. But here's the thing, you for food safety, you need to cook your food. It needs to be cooked thoroughly so that you don't get diseases and all that kind of stuff. You need to it's just basic part of good clean living and sanitation. All right, you need to cook your food. Um, and you're not going to be able to avoid all possible smells. But here's the thing, the people who are alive are also cooking. It's going to happen. You're not going to have roving bands of people that just standing around waiting to sniff somebody's barbecue out, and then they're going to come attack you. That's fantasy. That's a total fantasy. People are going to be preoccupied with trying to figure out how to exist in this new situation. All right, I'm not saying that people aren't going to be violent at times. There's going to be violence, and don't get me wrong, but it's not Mad Max. You're not going to be living in Mad Max and all this kind of stuff. There is probably going to be an initial craziness, and then it's going to quickly settle into a routine, the new reality, and people are going to cook. Okay, now if during that initial stage when you think that violence is happening and all that kind of stuff, you're probably not going to have to worry about it as much because early in that timeline there's going to be more food available, right? So people aren't going to be as starving and all that kind of stuff. As the timeline stretches out and people um, get to be more hungry and all that kind of stuff, then maybe it'll be a little bit more of a concern for you. But um, you still have to go about cooking your food. All right. And my recommendation would be if you're going to use, say, a barbecue grill, because a lot of people anyway, have barbecue grills and a propane tank. And you can cook on one of those several times before that propane ends out, whatever. And if you've got extra ones, then it'll last even longer. Um, Cook your food with no seasonings, no salt, or no not salt, but no seasonings, no sauces, and all that kind of stuff on the grill. Then bring it inside, put your condiments and stuff on it. All right. It's not going to smell as much, right? Because you don't have that mesquite barbecue smell and all that kind of stuff going on. If you want to be super precautious, boil it. Boil it. It's not going to put out as much smell. You can boil meats and it's still good to eat. It doesn't taste nearly as good, but you can do that. And the meat is submerged in the water. It's not going to be putting off as much smell and stuff like that. So that's a possibility for you. If you have the ability to bake something or whatever, if you bake it inside your house or whatever, you're going to smell it maybe more inside your house, but that smell is not going to go that far. Okay. And again, like I said earlier, if you're speaking with and working with your neighbors, then it's probably not going to be a problem. Okay. Because you have a relationship with them, you're working with them, you're doing patrols with them, you're probably sharing food with them at some point, and if you haven't really thought about that in your preps, if you haven't thought about the idea that you may need to have some food set back to share with people, you're wrong. Okay. Because, family, friends, close neighbors, whatever the case may be, if you believe something's going to happen and you want to work with them, then maybe you need to have some extra food. Maybe that needs to be something, a part of your plan is to put back some extra rice and beans or whatever the case may be, so that you can get the cooperation of your neighbors and you can keep them from coming and working against you and, all that kind of stuff. Justice Blue says Dakota hole fire. Yeah, I mean, you can do a Dakota hole fire. It's still going to put off, some degree of smoke, and when whatever you're cooking is still going to have some degree of scent to it or whatever. But Dakota hole fire is an option, especially if you are in a situation where you've bugged out, or something along those lines. Dakota hole fire. I've done a video on it. If you put in Dakota hole fire reality survival, it'll show you how to build one and all that kind of stuff. They're mostly used for combat and evasion kind of situations, but you could use it in a bug out kind of situation too. Lady T says solar ovens work well, and that's right. I did a video on the American solar oven. I think it was All American Solar Oven, something like that. And that is another good possibility. The cool thing with those is you put your food inside there, you set it out in the yard, and the sun comes down and heats everything up, and it has a sealed glass top that closes over the top of it, and it closes on a rubber seal, so you're not going to get a lot of scent and stuff like that out of a solar oven. And you can do a lot of different things with those. You can pasteurize water, you can bake bread, you can cook stews, you can do a lot of stuff with a solar oven. So those are definitely a viable option. The thing that you have to understand is that you need a full good view of the sun, and it's super obvious that something's sitting there because the reflectors on the side of it, are kind of stuck out like this, and they're reflecting the sun's rays down into the cooking area, and it's like a massive mirror, so people are going to see it. Again, going back to my point, you are going to have to get outside your comfort zone. You're going to have to get outside your house. You're going to have to engage with people, and you're going to need to think about how you're going to deal with that. Okay, dokie. Let's see. Yeah, Bumblebee Junction, this is spot on. He says in the comments here, you are not going to survive long if your choices lead to repeated violence. That is absolutely correct. And that's why I talked about that in the video I did called Looters Die First. The people who are going to die the fastest are the people who choose to engage in violence the most. Okay? So if that's your answer, you're going to die quicker. The odds of you dying are going to be higher. Period. End of story. That's going to happen. You need to try to have alternatives and alternative solutions to that, because it is not like the movies. Okay, the real world and real violence is not like the movies, and and many times there are no winners. All right. Everybody who gets involved in it may come out a loser in that situation, and you don't want that in an SHTF kind of situation, because medical is gonna not be good. All right, I'm just trying to kind of scan through the comments here. Yeah, Kanzi says here, I've made a solar oven on the cheap with a cardboard box and tin foil. It took a while to heat up a cup of tea. Something else you can do to bake stuff that I've done when camping and whatnot is you can take like an MRE sized box, that would hold like a case of them, and line that thing with aluminum foil, on the bottom, the sides, and the inside. And you can put it next to a campfire and have the fire burning over here and the box sitting right here. And you can put like biscuits and stuff like that in there and use that as an oven to bake stuff with off of a fire. That actually works pretty good too. So just a thought. Okay. All right, just trying to roll through the comments here. Again, if you guys got anything you'd like me to address, put it in all caps, or at least start it out in all caps or something so I can pull it out, because I don't have the time. You guys would be super bored if I actually tried to read all of these. Yeah, Masad Ayub is the man. If you guys aren't familiar with him, check out some videos and stuff like that are out there. He's got a lot of different ones. He also teaches classes and everything. And the Lord Humongous said that if you guys haven't checked out Lord Humongous's channel, you should do so. We recently did a collaborative effort that was kind of a failure on my part and Che's part, but we talked about the first 10 things to do when SHTF. So go over and check out those videos. They're pretty cool. All right. Bumblebee Junction says, in case you have 26 gun wounds, you need some tampons. You know, and I did a video on this one too. Tampons are not good for bullet wounds. I don't care what anybody says. They're not. Unless it's like a 22 or something, but they're not. So don't plan on using tampons for gunshot wounds. That's a terrible idea, and it's just not going to work at all. A tampon's a very small piece of gauze, and it's just not going to work. Let's see. Thanks, Miss B. I appreciate the kind words. So Kanzi makes a comment here, loose lips sink ships. And that to me is a yes and no kind of situation. And here's what I mean. OPSEC is important. Okay. I acknowledge that. You don't necessarily want anybody except your close personal people that you trust in your life to know the extent of your preparations, the full extent of your preparations. That being said, there's nothing wrong with talking with people about preparedness in general terms. I'm not talking about specifics, I'm not talking about how much food you have. I would always recommend downplaying the response. You know, like if somebody's like, "Oh, you're a prepper, I'm coming to your house when the apocalypse happens." You know what people say to when people say that to me, what I say is, "Yeah, come on over. Just be ready to pull guard duty. I'll feed you. No problem." I don't go any deeper than that. You know, I don't, if they're a person that I trust, I'll invite them over. Yeah, come on over, dude. You're willing to sit on guard duty at night, take the midnight shift? Okay, I'll keep you alive. You know, because I need people. I want people. I want people to be around me that I can trust. All right. That's the key to survival. That's the real no shit key to survival. When you go look in third world countries, you know, one thing that you recognize quickly is life is all about the tribe. Okay. It's all about the tribe. Everything that goes on in those countries relates to and is specifically entangled with the tribe. And that's because that is how you survive. If you don't have a tribe, you don't live. You don't get to exist in an SHTF kind of situation, in a third world kind of situation. You just don't. You don't get to live. You have to have a tribe of people. And that leads to another thing that I'd like to do a video on that's kind of on the topic of the dark side of prepping. Like Che over at Prepper Logic has done several videos on tribes are good and bad, and the reason a lot of really dark and bad stuff can and will happen in an SHTF kind of environment, apocalyptic environment, whatever you want to call it, is because of the insulation of the tribe. So you'll see tribes that, you know, are facilitating and furthering child sex slavery, and, you know, maybe another one that's cannibalism, and another one that is, you know, whatever the case may be. Those things are going to happen, and it's going to be up to the good tribes to put an end to the bad tribes. Okay. Because you can't allow stuff like that to continue to exist. You got to try to get back to a sense of normalcy. All right. And, so, you know, with immediacy and finality, you have to be willing to put those things down. But that's again another whole video. So when it comes to loose lips sink ships, I agree that you should not give away, you know, too much to anybody. But I do think that there is ways that you can talk to people in just a realistic way. If you live in Florida, and who was it? I think it was Adri San. He's a new channel. Check out his channel. I'll try to link it below. He's a former Army guy and a SWAT dude, and he's only had a few videos, I think. And Hibernian Sun recently did a VR to one of his videos, and he makes a good point. You know, he's like, if you live in Florida, you can talk about hurricanes. you're not an idiot or you're not crazy for talking about being prepared for a hurricane. If you live in Wyoming, say, you can talk about being prepared for a big snowstorm or an ice storm, or being locked in the house for um, you know 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Hey, would you guys be okay if we got snowed in for a couple weeks? Get people to start thinking about that. Maybe you live in a forest fire prone area. Yeah, every area pretty much has something, some potential natural disaster that could potentially happen in their area. Okay. And if it does, you talk about those things. Hey, are you guys able to handle that? I've been thinking about maybe trying to, you know, clear back the trees from my house a little bit in case a forest fire came this way, and or whatever. You can start those conversations about just reasonable things to do as a responsible citizen. You don't have to get into, I got this many guns and I got, thousands of rounds of ammo and I got food to last this long and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to make yourself seem like this big, awesome guy that can do anything or has got all this stuff. But if you think about it, in the long term, it helps you if you can get a relationship established with your neighbors, and you can get them to start thinking about preparedness, even on a low level, maybe a couple weeks worth of food, maybe whatever the case may be. That helps you. Okay, the better prepared you people around you are, the safer you're going to be. Okay, so it's a double-edged sword, and it's something that you have to be careful about. And I'm not saying just go blab your lips and tell everybody everything, but I'm saying be smart and be thoughtful about how you bring the conversations up with people who are in your immediate area. It'll be apparent anyway, and that's the other thing is that once it all kicks off, like I said, you're not going to be able to stay in your house, so forget about it. When everybody else around you is starving, okay, and you're not starving, it will become apparent. All right. So you're going to have to deal with this at some point or another. So why not deal with it before the situation gets bad? Because the answer can't be, okay, I'm just going to kill everybody who tries to come ask me for food or whatever the case may be. That's not real. That's not a thing. It'll get you killed, and your whole goal of survival will be out the door. Okay. So you have to start being mindful about how you bring the things up with the people around you. That's the bottom line, in my opinion. So I'm sure a lot of people will disagree, because most people in the prepper community say, don't say anything, OPSEC, 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 all that kind of stuff. But I think you're only thinking at the first level, tier one, kind of like Jay was talking about in our last thing. Think this through to the second and third levels of what's going to happen. Okay. And you're what you're going to come to, what the conclusion is going to be, is that to a certain level, it makes more sense to talk with people in a very generic way about trying to get them prepared, get the people prepared around you. It's going to happen. You should do it. And if you're not living in a place where you can do that, maybe you should consider moving. I know that's tough, man. I know that's expensive and it's tough and it's a hard life decision for people to make. That you're just going to pick up and move and all that kind of stuff. But if you are worried about a real collapse type situation, and it's something that you give credence to, well, then maybe you need to think about it. I mean, um, that's just the reality of the situation. Because otherwise, if you're in a situation that's untenable, and you know that it's not going to do any good to talk to anybody, or that they are just scavengers, and that they're takers. You've got givers and takers in the world, and they're takers. You don't want to be there. So okay. Let's see here. Just trying to catch up with you guys. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for today. Do you guys? I can't get through all this. Oh, EMP Shield says, "Love the shirt, JJ." Yeah. So this is rights are greater than laws, and you can get that at Teespring down below. I think it's like $15 plus shipping, so you can get it for under $20, something like that. I try to keep it to where I'm only making like $1 or $2 per shirt or something like that. I try to keep it as low as possible. So yeah, there's a bunch of other shirts down there too, several different designs and stuff like that. So, okay. I think that's all for today, unless you guys have got anything. Yeah, Kanzi, information is huge, a huge barter item in SHTF. It will be. Yeah, you cannot you can't realize how much just wanting to know what the situation is will drive your behavior in a a real kind of survival kind of situation. Um, it is going to drive your behavior, wanting to know what's going on, what people are doing, what's being reestablished. How can we get together and start reforming government, and what can we do here in this area? And by the way, just as an aside, since we're on a roll today, that should be your goal, right? You get with your group, and then your group gets with other groups, and then all those groups together come together with multiple other groups, and you start to reestablish neighborhoods, towns, counties, states. Okay, working in that vein, reestablishing order in those areas is hugely important, and that should be your goal. That should be what you're looking for. You're not just looking to survive. That's not the goal, and that's what so many prepper videos focus on. They focus into survival. We got to survive. That's it. And nobody talks about rebuilding. Okay, rebuilding is huge. It's hugely important, and it should be goal number 2. Survival is goal number 1. Goal number 2 is rebuilding. Okay, and working with people is the way that that's going to get done. And if you want to be an active participant in rebuilding, and I talked about this, and you'll be the next great leader. It's a video that I did. You need to be in a position to be charitable to people, to help people, to be able to barter and trade with people. You need to be in that situation so that you can be a part of the process to fix things. And especially if you're a constitutionalist, we need you involved in that process. Okay. Bumblebee, he says FEMA is the devil. He's trying to get me all fired up today. Oh, that would be a really good video. And I don't know that I'm prepared to speak about it offhand. I would probably screw it up, but I will mark this as a topic for a video. Kanzi asks, what are the 10 important stages of rebuilding? So I'm gonna take a picture of that to remind me to do a video on that, and I'll have to do some research on it, but hugely important. Why is my camera not working? Okay, so I'll put that on the list of things to talk about, so that we can look at doing that. And that there definitely are stages to go about it, because it has to start with you and your immediate areas. It works in concentric rings. This is how tribal societies are built. All right, they're focused in on family, tribe, sect, and and then religion as a whole, and then outsiders, something along those lines. That is kind of an adapted version of the way that Islamic tribes view the world and how they interact with them, and that kind of thing. That's something that I've had a couple of classes on. But so there is a system and a method to it, and it definitely is something that we can take a look at, because there are answers in that regard. So I'll do some research and I'll see what I can come up with. Okay. All right. Okay, guys, I guess that is it. Oh, before I go, I do want to go. I want to give you guys a screen share real quick here and show you. Oh, man. Hang on a second. Um, I want to show you a. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. Let's see. I want to show you the affiliate page on my website. Okay. So this is realitysurvival.com. If you guys haven't gone there, I would definitely appreciate it if you go there and sign up for the email notifications. I've been trying to put out blogs, blog posts more recently, and it's essentially written versions of the stuff that I talk about here. And I don't have the time and ability to incorporate every blog post as a written post, but some of the ones that I have typed out and put out in notes and stuff like that, then I try to go ahead and do that. Also, I've spoken about this a couple times recently. I've tried to establish some affiliate relationships with other companies so that I can offset income for the channel and not have to ask you guys to help through Patreon. I don't have any problem with Patreon. I just think that the information should be free. And I know that everybody out there shops online. So why not kill two birds with one stone? If you guys shop on Amazon, all you got to do is come to realitysurvival.com and look for this banner. You can find it here on the affiliates page or on the right side bar on the home page as well. Click on that link, go to Amazon, buy whatever you want. Doesn't cost you any more, and it gives me a little bit of credit. Let me know that you support the channel. I really appreciate it when you guys do that. Also, I got a relationship with Energy Kodiak solar generators. And if you purchase anything from their site, they'll give you a 20% discount. And I get a small percentage on that as well. Here's a link to the t-shirts if you guys want to look at those. We've also got a affiliate relationship with Legacy Food Storage. They're a very good food storage company. I've also established a relationship with Mountain House and Wise, I believe. And I'll be getting those links up as soon as I can. BattleBox, been reviewing their boxes for about 24 months, something like that. And I've only had one bad box so far. They're not for how you build your preps. BattleBox is more of a fun kind of thing to do if you have disposable income. But if you decide you want to try them, use that link right there, and that will that'll help me out. Next, Optics Planet. Optics Planet's got all kinds of different prepping gear and information. I've also established a relationship with Cabela's and Brownells. And so, and I'll get those links up as soon as I can. If you're going to shop at those places, just come and click this link to take you there. It'll give me a little bit of credit. That's all I'm asking. Bullet Safe and another company that I've established with is AR500 armor. And I think I've talked about this in other videos. Having armor for you and your members of your family is super important. Discount Mylar Bags is another company. If you want to get Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers and all that kind of stuff, super easy way to do it. Fast Act is a chemical decon gear company. I've done a video on that. If you want to take a look at that. Guardline Security. I've also done a video on that product, and I use it here at my house. It's a good product as well. Nomadic is a company I just started with. Their first box was good, but we'll have to see how time goes with that. But I think it was fine. It's a cheaper box, only like $30 a month or something. Armor Concepts. This is a company that I cannot stress enough, and I'm going to have a video on Armor Concepts here before too long. This is making your home a more hardened home to be able to break into. It's reinforcing door jambs and all those kinds of things. If you haven't done that to your house yet, click on the link, go take a look at it, and get yourself a kit, because it's really an important thing to do to make your house more safe. And then finally is Blue coolers, and these are very similar to like Yeti coolers. They work really well. They work a long time. They are expensive, but if you want to be able to keep ice for longer periods, this is going to work great for you. So there's several other companies that I'm going to be adding to this page here in the days to come. And when I do, I will let you know that they're out there. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. As always, I definitely appreciate it when you click the thumbs up button, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.